Well, my devotion for today, appropriately, is called Chronos or Kairos. The quality of the time that we spend with people is going to determine the depth of the spiritual care that we are able to provide to them. Now, chaplaincy is a 1,500-year-old Christian ministry that began in the 4th century. The last 50 years or so has seen a secular impact causing chaplaincy to be moved away from its gospel roots. That's why our mission is to restore chaplaincy to Christianity. And we hope that you'll consider joining us, supporting us in this important kingdom work. Now, chaplain has always been responsible for maintaining the chapel, a place where troubled people experiencing a storm may find a quiet moment of peace to encounter the sacred presence of God. The chaplain is a special office of clergy, recognized legally as a member of the clergy, created specifically to care for, to tend, and to keep the chapel. It's a place of peace and calm. The very word chaplain means the keeper of the sacred presence. That is exactly what we are. As Christian chaplains, born again believers in Jesus Christ, saved by grace through faith, we have his spirit dwelling in us. Therefore, wherever we go, there he is. Do others see him when they see you? We are to bring the sacred presence into all of our encounters. We bring calm and peace when his sacred presence surrounds our ministry. God does the work of drawing people to himself, but he sows us among them for the purpose of sharing his peace and assurance that we can trust him through the trial. Good things happen during Kairos moments. So, which is more important to our effectiveness as chaplains? Is it a Chronos moment or is it a Kairos moment? Kairos is an ancient Greek word found in Scripture to mean an opportunity, a season, a fitting time, a special time with God. It is very different from the word chronos, from which we get our watches from, the chronological time. Kairos is an appointed time with no regard for the length of chronological time that is spent. Kairos implies quality time, practicing the ministry of presence with the expectation of God showing up to do something special in that moment. Isn't that what we chaplains are all about? Isn't that what we hunger for? Isn't that what we're looking for in the work and mission and ministry? I have found the word in the original Greek New Testament. Kairos appears more than 80 times. Most often, Kairos implies the idea of an opportunity for a godly response or action. And when things come to a head and life is hard, we need a special encounter with God to see us through. A special and appointed time with God is represented in many scriptures. Matthew chapter 8, verse 29 shows the response that demons had to Jesus, asking, "Have you come to torment us before the appointed time?" And that's the word kairos, special time to come. Luke 19:44 describes a time of persecution to come to those who failed to recognize the kairos moment when God visited them and they refused to accept and did not see. In Matthew chapter 13, Jesus tells a parable of the wheat and the tares. And the setting is the world, and Jesus sows seeds of the redeemed among the weeds to live out the gospel in a way that makes a difference. And all this work we do among the tares of the world is in anticipation of a kairos moment when Christ will return and separate forever the wheat from the chaff. How is it possible for us to live among people of the world without having a sense of urgency about the coming special kairos moment of his return, and to have the desire to share his sacred presence in our encounters so that others can experience a Kairos moment right now in the midst of their pain and their suffering. Throughout Scripture, God provides Kairos moments, special appointed times for action to take place during a special time with God. In Luke chapter 1, verse 20, there was an appointed time, a Kairos moment for John the Baptist to be born according to the purpose of God. In Luke 12:42, the Lord promises to reward his servants at the proper time, at the Kairos moment. Mark chapter 1 describes the arrival of Christ as foretold by Isaiah in the Old Testament. And in verse 15, Mark tells us that the Kairos moment of his coming is fulfilled, and the kingdom of God is at hand. You can't get more Kairos than that. Nearly every one of the 80 plus occurrences of that word Kairos is described as a unique time where something special, often dramatic, is expected. Scripture warns those who believe to take advantage of these opportunities. The chaplain ministry of presence has a purpose. If we believe God, we simply must remain focused on his instructions for living and not get sidetracked by the teaching of men. It is not our job. It is not our job as chaplains to force people to hear something they do not want to hear, nor is it our job to push our beliefs or political opinions or any other opinion on someone else uninvited. God does the work of drawing people to himself, and he sows us among the people for the purpose of putting a changed life on display. What does it look like to live with and for Jesus? Extending the invitation to them of a relationship with us, the kind that produces Kairos moments. We are Christian chaplains, the keepers of his sacred presence, creating opportunity for Kairos moments to happen. And only God can make a Kairos moment. So let me close with this. Special moments are brought by God. The fuel of a Kairos moment is found in our willingness to listen patiently, be interested, to ask questions, and to just love them as they are. That is why the motto of our ministry is make a friend, be a friend, and draw your friend to Christ. So that concludes the devotion for today. Now next is our topic, followed by some Q&A. Gives me great pleasure to introduce our speaker for today. Evelyn Lemsky is, or Lemly, I'm sorry, Evelyn, is the CEO of Kairos International Prison Ministry. We love Kairos. My own journey to professional chaplaincy began with my participation in Kairos, serving with my fellow band of brothers at Calhoun State Prison in Georgia. I think Dan Jalkin is in our meeting with us today, and Dan was one of those original group, and he's one of our earliest chaplains who joined our ministry. Dan and I were so pleased to know that there's a possibility of collaboration with Kairos. That experience in my Kairos provided a Kairos moment for me that changed the entire trajectory of my life and mission. It was the catalyst that led to the mission of Christian chaplains and coaching. We love the work being done by Kairos Prison Ministries, and we'd like to encourage you to consider partnering with them. Get involved with their ministry, experience it for yourself. Find a Kairos chapter near you and join them. Get involved with them. They are all about those Kairos moments I talked about in my devotion. Working together with him, it says in 2 Corinthians chapter 6, verses 1 and 2. Working together with him, then, we appeal to you not to receive the grace of God in vain. For he says, in a favorable time, Kairos moment, in a favorable Kairos moment, I listened to you, God said. And in a day of salvation, I have helped you. Behold, now is the favorable time. Kairos moment. Behold, Now is the day of salvation. That, my friends, chaplains and prospective chaplains, is what we are all about. And so is Kairos Ministry. Evelyn, thank you so much for joining us today. If you could go ahead, Jenny, and take me off of the spotlight and put Evelyn on the spotlight, and we'll let her share some thoughts about what Kairos is actually doing and accomplishing, and then we'll open it up for Q&A. Go ahead, Evelyn.
Well, thank you, Jim, for having me today, and hello, everyone. What an honor it is to share a little bit. Let me start with just picking up on what Jim was talking about of Kairos. We've been in existence from 1976, and our founders named us Kairos Prison Ministry. Because of exactly what Jim just described, that special time. And we actually use the tagline, God's special time, which makes perfect sense with our using the name Kairos. And our journey is to be people of Christ, bringing the love and forgiveness of Christ into a dark world. There's many places in our world that's dark, and as chaplains, you would definitely know that, and prisons are definitely one of them. So it fits perfectly with who we are, and what we are about is trying to take people on a journey with Christ. Uh, we all know as believers, sometimes you can introduce Christ and people are ready for him right then, and other times it takes a while. And it maybe takes a lot of other people to be involved in that journey for people to actually get it. I guess I'll say, to understand that love of Christ. But let me tell you just a little bit about Kairos if you don't know. Like I said, we started in 1976, so we've been around a while. We have roughly 30,000 volunteers operating around the world. We're currently in 37 states. Probably within the next couple of years, we will add 2 or 3 more states. We're currently in 9 countries, and we're in the process of opening 5 new countries as we speak. So we're expanding, and like Jim said, God just continues to open doors. The really neat thing is also is we have more prisons asking us to be in the prisons than we have people to do the work. So it sort of reminds me of that scripture of the harvest is plenty and the workers are few. We definitely see that alive and well in the world of ministry, don't we? But what we focus on is our mission is to share the transforming love and forgiveness of Jesus Christ to those impacted by incarceration. So we go into men and women's prisons, we go into youth facilities, and we work with the women of the incarcerated. So I'm going to just sort of unpack that just a little bit. But I want to give you the rest of that mission statement. It's so that they can become loving, productive citizens in their community. And we consider the prison environment a community. It's not, a lot of people go, well, when they come out. No, we want them to be loving, productive citizens right where they're at in that community, so they're making a difference in the world there. So we really focus on their journey while in prison so that they can become better when they get out of prison also. So it's a unified approach. So we have 3 distinct programs. One is we call Kairos Inside. That's when we go inside the prison. One is called Kairos Outside. That's when we work with the women of the incarcerated on the outside of the prison. And one is called Kairos Torch, and that's when we work with youth. Youth being 25 and under in an adult or a youth facility. So Kairos Inside, Kairos Outside, Kairos Torch. They're all structured very similarly. It's based on doing an event, which we call a weekend, which is anywhere from Thursday night till Sunday, basically in the prison, with a group of men or women there focusing on that. So if it's a men's prison, we have men in. If it's a women's prison, we have women in. And so we're focused on them, taking them on a journey. And our programs are designed so that the first time we're introducing them to ourselves, because you have to build trust. You say who we are, what we're all about, what we're doing. The next day is then focused on them getting them to think about their behavior, what brought them there, what's the choices that they've made, where are they at, what's that journey about. The third day is focused on the introduction to Jesus Christ. Who is Jesus and how he is the answer to all of these things that we've sort of identified. And then the fourth day, which is a shortened day, is really focused on community, of how do we do all this together? What's that body of Christ that's working together? Why are all these Christians coming in there, spending all this time with them, and trying to take them on the journey? And what does that look like? Now, during that whole 4-day event, we're trying to demonstrate all the things that we're trying to teach them at the same time: that community, that love, that forgiveness. We do everything from, if the facility will allow us, to feeding them. We're known as the cookie ministry, so we bring in homemade cookies if they'll allow us. And so, because we're building with the basics, the basic hierarchy of needs are, you got to feed the basics in order to feed the soul. So we try to do all encompassing components of not only building trust, but building camaraderie and fellowship in order to build that community in the long run. And we all know that Jesus Christ is the answer. But sometimes if you just try to pound Jesus Christ down without demonstrating how he's impacted our lives, it doesn't come across very well, right, in our society. So we're trying to demonstrate that through. We do a very focused, very structured program, which the prisons really like, because it's an organized program that has impact. And so as we take people on that journey, we're trying to build them into that community. And so the goal is to have anywhere between 18 to 42 men or women in the program at one time. And the reason is, in order to build community, you got to have a group of people together. So, but then we have a lot of one-to-one relationship and then group community all the time. So we're doing that one-to-one and then bringing it back. We do that through table families and just continue to build on it. So it's really an awesome program that's based a lot off of, you may have heard of the Curcio movement several years ago and things of that nature, that the concept came from, that our founders developed. And so in doing that, in that immersion for that intense time of 38 to 40 hours together, in and out of the prison Thursday to Sunday, and then having a closing ceremony where we bring more community in to show them all of these people that's been praying for them, and the agape, and we just have so many different things that's going on in it to show the outside world supporting them. It can be anything from youth have made placemats, to the food that's been prepared for them, to a prayer chain, and different things of showing there's a lot of people out there that's praying for me right now, and bringing this together. Again, showing that community of Christ at work, not only with the group that's present, but there's a whole group, an army surrounding them. So once we're done with that weekend, we're also known as the ministry that comes back. And so the reason is that our goal is to have what we call prayer and share every week inside the facility for those who've gone through the program. Now, the goal of that is for them to get into small groups and share their concerns and their challenges for the week. You know, I had a fight with my wife, you know, whatever the cases may be, and then to pray for one another. And what's the goal there? We're trying to teach them how to have their own accountability group and prayer group, so that when we're not there, they've got that support group among themselves. So we're constantly just trying to reinforce that and to bring them back together. Then monthly, we have a monthly reunion where everybody can come together, have some celebrations, but guess what? They're leading the monthly reunions. So they're sharing their journey. We're there to support and to be a part of the group and to reinforce, but they're sharing it. So we continue that, and then every 6 months we repeat the big event. We go through the weekly, we go through the monthly, and it's just a continuation cycle. So we have some prisons that almost everyone in the prison has gone through the program. Guess what those prisons look like? We have some. Does that mean that everybody's Christian? No, I didn't mean to imply that. But it does mean that there's a behavioral change there because you have a vast majority that have gone through. We have a lot of locations where the states pick where we've been there a long time to create their faith-based dorms and things of that nature to build it through. A lot of the states have a criteria that before they'll put the seminary there must be a Kairos that's been operating for quite a while within that facility because they've seen the dramatic impact of what happens. The norm within the recidivism rate is that our data will show over a long period of time, it's very consistent, that the recidivism will go down by half for if people have gone through Kairos and actually been a part of the programs. So it's a pretty significant component there of doing that program and working with those men and women that are incarcerated. And actually, for the women, it's a higher number than 50%. It has even higher impact there. We do the exact same thing for the women of the incarcerated. Now, that could be a wife, of course, of a man. It could be the daughter, the grandmother, the sister, the aunt. You know, there's a whole extended family out there that is impacted by incarceration. These are the people that a lot of times are living with shame of what their loved ones have done. It's really sad that a lot of churches don't know that there are people in their congregation that have a loved one in prison. Why? Because they're ostracized. If I had a husband that had committed murder in this prison, but I still love him and am supporting him, and he's accepted Christ and changed his ways, but I would be ostracized, right? In my church, even because, oh, that must be a bad person because their family member did this. And so they tend to be quiet. They tend to be very alone. And we say they're doing time right alongside their loved ones a lot of times. So we have a program we call Kairos Outside, where we take them on the exact same journey, except it's very focused on what they're dealing with. And a vast majority of our volunteers for our Kairos Outside program are graduates of our Kairos Outside program, meaning they know exactly what these women are going through. They've experienced it, and so they can share their experiences of dealing with having a loved one in. A lot of times having a loved one that's come out and that's growing in that. And so we take them on that journey. So exact same thing for a weekend, taking them through the journey. Then we have what we call weekly gatherings. We call them SWAP, Share, Witness, Accountability, Prayer, right? Trying to teach them how to, you have a community out here, use it. Share with one another. If you're having a bad day, call somebody, right? That's the whole concept. And then having monthly reunions, same concept, and taking them through it. Repeat, repeat, repeat. Building that body, building that community. And then we have a program called Kairos Torch, which is focused at the youth. So it's structured the same, but very targeted at youth, a lot more interactive, kinesthetic learning and things, because that's how youth learn, trying to take them on that exact same journey weekend. Then the difference there is we actually teach our volunteers to do mentoring for the youth. Because what we want the youth to do is to change behavior, right? To develop a life plan so that they don't end up in the main prison, right? Because most of these are in youth facilities. So we do mentoring, then we do the monthly reunions and we continue. So the mentoring, we want to go for 6 months. A lot of the youth don't stay in for 6 months. So we do that as long as we can with the focus of, again, you can choose to change this directory that your life is on. So the structure of all of our programs are the same. It's just very targeted at the audience that we're dealing with. And therefore, maybe how we carry it out, the talks are a little different, and the focus of how we're working with them to demonstrate that love and forgiveness of Jesus Christ changes a little bit. But the goal is the same. Share the love and forgiveness of Jesus Christ, introduce them to Christ, continue to come back and reinforce that, and to help them grow in that knowledge and faith walk. Hopefully they do, and continue that so that they have a community. Now, let me clearly state, we are not trying to be their church. We are not the church. We're trying to connect them so they understand that, and then connect them with the church, either when they get out or as a family member that's there. So we're not trying to replace the church. We're trying to build the church, right? We're trying to enhance the church. So some people get confused on that because what we sort of describe sounds a little bit like a church if you really think about it. But our point is to connect them with the body of Christ, not to be their church. So so that's pretty much the broad spectrum of that. As I said, we've got a huge army of people. We rely on lay people, right? We train people, we teach people. We people like me. I'm not a pastor, I'm not ordained. I'm just a lay person who loves Jesus and wants to share who he is. And happen to have some leadership management capability that God called me to a role. And so we rely on lay people, but at the same time, we're very dependent on ordained people within our weekends. We use ordained people within each and every one of our programs because we want to make sure we have someone that's qualified to talk about certain questions or certain discussions. And so we always have those ordained people in the program, and they have very specific roles within the program. There's certain talks what we want to be done by what we call clergy, which would be our ordained people. And every one of the programs have that. So while the majority of our people are lay people, we rely on that combination of having a healthy mix and having that ordained person there. So I want to emphasize the importance of even that component of what Jim had talked about earlier, of the importance of chaplaincy. Well, it may be pastors we're using, but there's no reason we can't have ordained chaplains doing that same thing. I also want to emphasize the importance to you guys of the chaplains within the facilities, within the prisons, men, women, youth. Um, we're starting to see a trend. Well, the youth facilities already don't have chaplains. They quit hiring chaplains in most states. That's a very sad statement that I just made. They use program directors and administrators. So there is no spiritual focus if we don't bring it in. Um, at least in most adult facilities, state run and federal, there's still a chaplain. And the more chaplains we can have out there that are Christian based and doing that, because quite frankly, in a lot of cases, there is no criteria for a chaplain to have any kind of faith. You know, Jim talked about that. You could have an atheist chaplain, and things, and so it becomes more of an administrative role than it does a pastoral role, if I may just use that word for lack of a better one, a chaplain, as Jim described it to you in the beginning. So the importance of what um, Jim and team and what you guys are doing or considering doing of that chaplaincy, I can't emphasize it enough in the prison world, because due to budgets and constraints and different things, the government is going away from offering that, from offering a chaplain that we so often think of as Christians of, well, chaplains have to be Christians, right? No, chaplains just become a title in so many cases to fulfill a role, not a spiritual leadership of any way, shape, or form. And so our goal is to endorse and try to have as many Christian chaplains as possible because of that influence. While you may have to represent all faiths, you can still have an influence in a whole different way. And so the importance of that role is second to none within those facilities. So I just wanted to emphasize that and say the role of what you do is critical in our world. And I'm, of course, focused on the prison, but I know there's the hospital, and I mean, we can list the whole long list. So, excuse me, wanted to emphasize that. So, the thing with Kairos is We need people. We partner with churches. We bring in people. Of course, they have to be Christian in order to volunteer in our ministry. And but other than that, everybody is welcome to attend the program, but only Christians are giving the program, if you will. And so we are very excited to look at the possibility of um, partnering more and more with the opportunities of working with the chaplain groups and things. So, uh, Jim, I'll turn it over to questions or things maybe you want me to focus on or things that people want to know that after that little overview of what we do and how we do it.
Sure. Thank you,
Sure.
Evelyn. We'll go ahead and keep you spotlighted instead of me. And so those of you that have a question you'd like to ask, if you look at the very top of the screen on the far right, you will see a big red button that says leave. Don't hit that button, but move over to the left until you see something that says chat. And if you have a question, just type it in the chat for us. We'll take them sort of in the order that they come, and then I'll read those questions out as they come up. You mentioned two things that I want to key in on, Evelyn, which are very crucial to our approach to chaplaincy. The first is community. And we believe that discipleship cannot happen like everybody serving as a lone ranger by themselves, which is what Christianity in the United States has sort of become in recent years. I'll do it myself apart from everybody else, and yet that is not discipleship. You can't make disciples outside of the context of community, like the family of God on mission together with Jesus to whoever they're called to serve. And in this case, we're talking about prison. So community is really important to everything that we do. It's really important. And then the second thing is you mentioned the ordination and the possibility of having chaplains serve as clergy to fill that role, both in the state prisons that don't have the money, but they may allow a volunteer chaplain who has the requirements met and the credentials to be able to serve 10 or 20 hours a week at a state prison that doesn't currently have a Kairos ministry. And the reason they don't have a Kairos ministry is because they don't have a chaplain. And most of them are going to say, well, we don't have a chaplain, so we can't bring in Kairos. So, boy, if we can get one of our chaplains placed in a prison and then that chaplain connects with Evelyn and let's bring Kairos in, now you're off to the races, but it might have to be a volunteer position. And the cool thing for us is last year, for those of you that don't know, the Federal Board of Prisons, the federal government approved our ministry as an acknowledged ordaining and endorsing organization. We are accepted by the Federal Bureau of Prisons and by the Veterans Administration hospitals. That's a big deal that they recognize our ordination as chaplains, considering them clergy and the training that we provide. We are asked all the time to find chaplains and endorse them to serve. So I'll just leave it at that. And I see the first question is going to come from Greg Crowder. So go ahead and unmute, Greg, and ask your question.
Okay. Thank you, Evelyn. I tried the chat in just FYI. I tried to chat and typed a question in, and it says I have to have somebody else to chat with. So anyway, but my question is this: I'm a Southern Baptist. Okay, I I know a little bit about Muslims. I know a little bit about I don't know pretty good bit about atheists because I run into so many of them. But how do you handle someone like me going in and volunteering, and we got a class and 5 Christians, and I've got 25 Muslims. I mean, I don't know what to say. I don't know. I've never read the Quran, and I help me out there. Do you train me what to do, what to say?
Yeah, well, as far as and I'll let Jim answer that from the chaplaincy standpoint. I'm going to answer it from the Kairos standpoint. Um, our program is structured that it doesn't matter who is in attendance. We do the exact same program. Okay, but then we do have some different things where we talk about if you've got Muslims there, how to approach them. But the answer from our program is you approach them in the same way you do everyone else. You have them participate and go through our program, and then it comes up to them of the decision we've made. We've had Muslims that's gone through our program. For example, there's one young man I remember talking to when I was visiting one of our programs. He said, I'm a Muslim and I'm not changing being a Muslim, but I have a whole different perspective of Christians now. Well, that's a seed. It may not have changed him today, and who knows what may God that's God's job, right? Of what happens down the road, but it was a seed. So from our program, we train our volunteers that no matter who you're dealing with, you go through this same program. There may be 5 Christians in the room, and 10 atheists, and 3 Muslims, and 2 Satan worshipers. We've had everything, Wiccans, you name it, it's been in the room. We've had people with horns that's tattooed on their heads that were absolute devil worshipers in our program. So how we approach that does not change. Program's the same. We go through the program, they participate. They can choose how much they're engaged. We don't force anybody to do something. But here's the other thing. Before they sign up, they're agreeing that they're going to go through the program and participate by our rules. So we don't give them a prayer corner for their Muslim prayers at the time. Because this is the program. If you're going to go in our program, you're going to follow our rules. Okay? And that's all worked out ahead of time. So we train them. But here's the thing I will say. Part of what your question is of why do we want ordained people in the room, it's so that they can answer those specific questions that people may have, like what you're asking, which ties back to the ordained chaplaincy of how do you answer this of, well, I believe Jesus was a prophet and, blah, 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 like a Muslim. And how do you answer that? Well, an ordained person, most lay people, but an ordained person has been trained to do that. So Jim, I'm going to ask you to sort of cover that from the chaplaincy standpoint a little, if you have a response there. Let's tie those two together.
I do actually, and that's why the second lane of our mission and purpose as a ministry is the Chaplains Academy. We have to create opportunities for you to learn. We encourage our chaplains to consider getting their master's degree at Masters of Chaplaincy, perhaps from Liberty University or from Charlotte Christian College and Theological Seminary, so that you can continue to learn the things that you need to learn. And if you're still breathing, you're not done learning. And if you're not studying, you're not a disciple. And if you're not a disciple, you can't be one of our chaplains. And if you can't be one of our chaplains, why are you calling yourself a Christian? That would be my question to you. So where do you learn, though? I mean, we provide all kinds of resources. So Greg, reach out to me by email. I'd be happy to give you written resources. There's something called Rose Publications that produces an amazing inventory of resources to help people understand various beliefs, faiths, cults, religions. There's a whole pamphlet and section on understanding what Muslims believe. But here's the most important thing. You're not there to say anything. You're there to listen, to love, to make friends, to let them tell you what they believe. Pretend you're Socrates and play dumb. Just say to them, I don't know anything about your faith. Help me understand, who is God from your point of view? And let them educate you on what they believe. You'll be amazed at how those opportunities will provide an open door for you to share the reason for the hope that is within you, and how many people will come to Christ as a result of you just zipping it and asking them questions and letting them do the talking. Because chaplains are not there to hit people in the head with their Bibles. We're not there to argue with them about what is right or wrong, what is true or false. We are not there to be apologists for the Christian faith. And after 5 minutes of them talking, we're engaged in an argument about what they should believe, because everything they do and believe is wrong. That's not why we're there. The skill of chaplaincy, as I say over and over and over, is a learned skill. The ministry of presence, being interested in their story, helping them to talk things out that nobody else will give them permission to talk about, deep-seated feelings and worries and concerns and anxiety and anger and issues that are pent up beliefs that nobody will listen to, and we let them talk, and we use questions. And often those questions can guide them right to the truth without us having to proselytize. So I'll just leave it at that. And yes, we do want to teach more of our chaplains about that.
And that's very much what we do within Kairos is we have another little slogan that we call listen, listen, love, love. So sometimes it's just sitting there and letting them share. And we at the table family, we do things like posters. Someone will do a talk. Let's just say we have a talk called Choices. It's actually what we start the weekend for with the Kairos Inside program. And you made choices to get here. You can make choices in the future to change your trajectory, right? Sort of that concept. That's a very poor description, but that's what the concept is.
Yeah.
After that talk, then the table families would have a discussion about it, and there's structured programs that are led through. And so that's where they're talking to each other and sharing, and we have volunteers at the table that's helping lead that and guide it. But it's about them talking and sharing and getting this out. So they're listening, they're processing, and we're trying to help take them on this journey that I described of understanding. Here's and I don't mean this in a negative way, but there's people, and churches like to do this a lot. They want to go in and they want to preach, and then they want to leave, and sometimes they think that's going to convert everyone. And sometimes, again, I don't mean that in a negative way at all, because you need that also. But so many times, just preaching at someone doesn't bring them to Christ. You may be teaching them in that time about the concept or how to live or whatever it is, but you really need people coming alongside you sharing in the journey. And that's what we try to do. So I
That
don't know
that
if we answered your
no,
question, but we took
that
a
that's
stab at
very good. That's really very good. I mean, the bottom line for chaplains is that we're not there to proselytize. We're there to be a ministry of presence and establish a relationship. And I guarantee you, when people who are not Christian encounter somebody who says that they are Christian, they immediately, from experience, expect to be judged.
Yeah, yeah.
They expect to be condemned. They expect a finger wagging condemnation of their sin without acknowledgement of our own.
Right.
And trust me, there's lots of sin that exists in the church. And so we're not there for that purpose. I see Herb. I don't see your last name, but Herb has his hand up. He's next in the list. So Herb, if you want to go ahead and unmute and ask your question.
Yes. From a few passing acquaintances with people that work in prisons, and from my own year and a half years ago in law enforcement, I wondered how much is training and how much screening you do to make sure that none of your people get involved in insecure or inappropriate situations.
Well, I'm not quite sure what you mean by insecure and inappropriate, but are you talking that is that question directed to Christian chaplains and coaching or to Kairos?
To Kairos,
Okay, go ahead, Evelyn.
because
So repeat the question there for me. What's the question? How do we keep people out of trouble?
yes, how do you keep people secure and how do you keep them engaging in inappropriate behavior? Because everybody in prison has made a mistake. Not everybody in prison is dumb. And there's always smart people that are using programs that are supposed to help them for their own purposes. And
So
I just wondered how you prevent
are you
that from becoming an issue.
are you talking about the volunteers that are going in, or are you talking about the participants who are there? Protecting
Well,
who? Okay.
you have there's an interaction there, and there is a possibility for issues both ways.
Well, I would answer that in a few different ways. And yes, we are very aware of that. And having people go into the facility, you unfortunately occasionally do have that. We do training on it. We all of our teams are required to go through 38 hours of training prior to every weekend. So it is covered in every single training. we tend to have a lot of repeat volunteers, so they learn by default. There's a little bit of that comes into play, but we also we have a rule that you never have a situation where you are alone with an inmate in any way, shape, or form. Okay, so some of it is how you structure things. Okay, so we train it, but we also structure our program so that it's in a group setting. So people tend to get in trouble if you isolate yourself with someone else, right? Especially, okay, for example, we wouldn't put one of our chaplains, even though we say we want the chaplains to maybe go talk to an inmate. Maybe the person said, I want to talk to Joe about something, and share a little bit and ask a few more questions. Well, we'd never let them be one-on-one alone in a private setting. Now, you give them privacy, right? But you don't give them isolation or aloneness where you can't be seen by other people. So part of it is just how we structure things. So there's always exposure to other people being able to watch and be a part of. And so we're very, very careful with that. And then, of course, in the prison setting, you always have guards that's around. Correctional officers are present from that standpoint. So we sort of have a threefold component of training, how it's structured and designed so that you don't allow those situations to happen. And the third one is the facility themselves are going to protect that.